Hello, I'm Jos Weyers. I'm going to talk about impressioning and not, as the introduction said, about copying keys. That's a different talk. That's not the one we're going to give here. We're going to talk about impressioning, which is the art of making a key. And by doing that, we use the same flaws that we use for lockpicking, that you can do downstairs at the Lockpick Village. And so I'll talk about these flaws before we can get into action. As I said, I'm Jos Weyers. I'm a member of Hack42, which is an awesome hackerspace in Arnhem. And the awesomeness, well, we are awesome, and well, that's not just our words, but Hackaday at one point described it as the most awesome space in existence, which I can only agree upon, of course. Besides from that, I'm a founding member of the Beehive Tech Campus. That's a foundation that's currently in the process of buying this piece of real estate to turn it into an international hacker hub. But that's not why I'm here. I'm a member of Tool. And Tool is the open organization of lockpickers. And that means we open locks, normally without force and normally without keys. And we do that as a sport. And because, well, lockpicking, it sounds a bit of James Bondy. And in order to stay out of trouble and mainly out of jail, except if we want to buy that, we have to abide to a couple of simple rules. Rule number one, only pick locks that you own, or have permission from the actual owner to pick. And if you can help it, try to refrain from picking locks that you rely on. Because at some point you will fail, and then your lock will either be unopenable or unclosable. And that's in case of your front door, you can't get in or you can't get out without locking it. That's a problem. So if you abide to those rules, you're probably good. Well, in order to open the lock, and to figure out how to do that, first we have to know what a lock is. Well, ta-da, this is a lock. It's a bit crappy photo, but... So, it's a round thing with a hole in it, and if the round thing turns, we call it open. Mind you, that's the sports definition. If the round thing turns, we call it open. If it's in a door and you want to open the door, then it matters which way that round thing turns, right? Because otherwise you just relock it. In sports, I don't care. If it turns, it's open. But if I start turning this, it won't open. So let's look at this in a schematic way. So we have a round thing with a hole in it, and if you look in it, you see something, and this needs to turn. Okay, if we take an MRI, so we take a layer off, we end up with this. So there's a layer off. That's the bit we saw in the picture before. And, well, the red bit is actually not the bit that's preventing that round thing from turning, it's the blue bit. And if we look at this, if we start turning it, you see, blue gets stuck, so it won't work. So in order to open this, we push the red pin down until the correct level, and then it turns. Right? It's, we're taking baby steps here, but we'll get there. This is stuff we need in order to open the other stuff. So that pin has to be pushed to the correct depth, then it turns. But this is called a pin stack, and only one pin stack is basically a shitty lock. I wouldn't call that a lock. And in a normal lock, 5 is a good default. So all these 5 pin stacks have to be pushed to the correct level in order to enable the cylinder to turn. And if we do that, yeah. Dun 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 dun. We have a reboot. Okay, sorry, techniques. Like I said, in order to open these locks, the 5 pin stacks have to be pushed to the correct depth. There's a special tool for that. It's called a key. And actually it looks like crap, but okay. So they all have to be pushed down to the correct level. And normally we use a key for that. And if even one bit is too low, then it doesn't open. And even if it's high, it doesn't open as well. Now, how can we go in a lock with 5 pieces of metal to actually push those down to the correct depth, because we have to keep them in that correct depth? Well, because the idea is the way it's designed, that, like I said, if you try to turn this cylinder without a key in it, there are 5 blue bits preventing the cylinder from turning. Well, yeah, that's the way it's designed. But in the real world, we have crap like this. These are pins that's supposed to be cylindrical. Well, you see there's wear and tear on them. This is the plug, so the cylinder where the drill holes are in, so the pins are here. This latch is supposed to be a 90-degree angle. which it clearly isn't. There's some wear and tear in there, and actually this is manufacturer error. But in order to do this, and these pins are, well, they're not the same. Some of them are bigger than others, wider, because they're supposed to have different length, but the width is different. Which is always true, because you can't make two metal objects exactly alike. You can make them look alike, but if you zoom in enough on the micro level, there will be differences. Which is fun for us, because that enables us to do this. Because instead of claiming that there are 5 pins preventing it from turning, I can now claim there's 1 pin preventing it from turning first. So if I start turning this cylinder, there's 1 piece of metal that's the first one to get stuck. And if we look at that 1 piece of metal, then we're back to this picture again. So if we turn this, this is clearly stuck. And if we turn this a bit further, this gets squished to the side. And if you push that down, with some luck, this remains on this ledge. Does that make sense? Okay, so that enables us to do the following. We apply a bit of turning pressure on this lock, go in with the feeler. This is just spring pressure. That's just a spring. That's just a spring. That one doesn't want to go down because it's squished to the side. That's the one we push down. And rinse and repeat, trying to find the pin that doesn't want to go down. We push that down to the correct level, and then we have an open lock. Okay, let's demo this. I use an American lock for my demos, because I don't want my demos to fail. We have a finger pick. There you go. So this is a lock. Well, first time I was in America, I bought this lock at the Home Depot something. And it took me way longer to get it out of the shrink wrap than actually pick it. Of course it doesn't work. Okay, open lock. So that's quite easy. Okay. Well, besides from this, you can also use some bit of brute forcing thing in it. So you put a snake, that's what we call it. So it's less of a exact science. You just go in with a swervy bit and do the same. That's supposed to make it faster. Let's see if that's actually true. A swervy bit in. Not a good day. Try this again. Swervy bit open. Okay, there you go. So that's an open lock. So swervy bits are fun. And other ways of opening the same lock is physics. Because physics, Newton, billiard balls. You know where I'm going here. If the white ball hits the red ball, what happens? The blue ball moves. What happens to the red ball? It stays. Okay. And to prove that scientifically, we have an animation. You see? The gentleman is right. So these colors, of course, are not chosen at random. So what we're trying to establish here, what if we have a way to get in this lock and hit all the red bits? And if science is right, and normally it isn't, normally it is actually, then what should happen is that the red bits stay in place and the blue bits shoot off. That would look a bit like this. So we go in with a piece of metal, we hit it, blue shoots off, and on this moment, the lock is open, because the cylinder can turn, because there's nothing in the way. Let's see if that's actually true. Light pressure. A device. Yank that in. And science is right. So that works. That, of course, took way too long. So we have other gear. Open. Jesus. Okay, so that's your American lock for you. Fair to say, in America, yes, they do sell crap like this. They also have very good locks. And that's about it. So as a normal consumer, you have a choice to buy crap or very good stuff. It's quite hard to buy an okay lock in the States. It's either crap or very good. And of course, crap is quite cheap, and very good is very expensive. So your average household, and I'm talking 90% plus, will have crap like this on the door. So if you're watching a movie and the hero walks up to a door, does something like this and walks in, if it's an American movie, that could be correct. In Europe, there's a bigger choice of what you can actually buy, quality-wise. But of course, well, this is called a pig gun, because it looks like a gun and it has a trigger and everything. And well, and on an X-ray, it actually does look like a gun. So getting through customs with this is challenging. And this, of course, is just a vibrating thing. That gets me other questions. So what if we could stick something else in the lock that will take some considerable force or some impulse, and that doesn't look that conspicuous, but it has to touch all the pins at the same time? Well, there's a thing for that, and that's called a key. What if we take a key and file it to the deepest, well, we call it, file it the furthest that it still works like a key. So we call this a 9 cut, so the deepest, and we take a bit of material off the shoulder. So we can move it a bit. If we move this, then they move down for a bit. What we can do now, if we hit this key, and with quite some force, and physics says that the impulse would move the keys, would move the pins out of the way. Let's try this. We have a different lock. Oops. Get out. Okay. Well, this is the key that is cut to the deepest level, but it has been hit that much that it won't even get out. So this doesn't turn, of course, because it's cut way more than it should be. But if you hit it, and if you miss, it should hurt. Today is not a good demo day. We're doing it live. At some point it will, yeah. Okay, it's supposed to, yes, and we have an open lock. Well, you didn't see me doing very technical stuff. I'm just hitting it and in my mouth, praying and hoping that I don't hit my thumb. And that's about as technical as it gets. This is physics. Well, like I said, in the US, you have slim choice of, you don't have that much choice of which locks you can buy. The consumer market, the low end, basically there are 2 manufacturers that do that. And for this to work, you have to have a key that fits in your lock. Not the right combo, but it has to fit. The form has to be the same. With only 2 manufacturers, that means I basically have to have 2 prepared keys and I can walk in. In Europe, if you go to a key copy center, you see a whole wall full of blank keys. You go like, well, do I need all those keys in order to do this trick? Well, actually, no. Because if you ask the key cutter, like not so much what do you sell, but what do you sell the most, he'll come up with a subset of those keys. Well, now, a couple of 10 years ago, something about that time, some guys reinvented this. Well, it's an old technique, but they wrote a white paper about it, and that got quite some media attention. And after that point, most lock manufacturers came up with a lock that is not susceptible to this attack. But those that were, at that time, this was about 90% of all your European doors. So that would be fun. So whatever you do, if you get a new house, change your locks, because you don't know where the keys are. The former owner could have given to anybody. And especially if you're in a new built housing complex, then probably all the keys are from the same brand. So they'll have the same shape. So if you start filing your keys down to a lower level, and you can do this trick, you're basically opened up the whole neighborhood, which in my mind is not that brilliant. So change your locks. This was lockpicking, but the talk is called impressioning. Okay, the question. What if I can be in front of your important door, let's say a server door, for 2 seconds? Will I get questioned, arrested, dragged off? Will there be a problem? I don't think so. Pretty sure I can be in front of your computer door for 2 seconds without getting questioned. Can I be there for a minute without getting questioned? Can I be there for 10 minutes? Well, if I can be at your computer door for 10 minutes without getting questioned, I think we have other problems. But let's say 2 seconds, because I don't think 2 seconds will be a problem. For me, walking up the door, doing something, oh, wrong door, and I move off. That's not suspicious. But what if I do that twice a day for about a week? Will you guys notice? Will your SIEM system yell havoc? Will there be a problem? I don't think so. Why do you ask this? Well, there's a technique that makes use of those time frames. So if we take a blank key, so an uncut key, and put that in the lock, then, well, it won't turn, because in the former slides, all the blue bits were preventing it from turning, but now there's a big hunk of metal in the middle, so now it's the red bits. But same principle apply. If I turn this key, well, if I turn this lock with the key, then there's one red bit preventing it from turning first. That makes sense, right? So what if I turn this, then this one is the one that's preventing it from turning. If I now jiggle my key up and down under force, so I turn and then move it up and down, then this pin, this pin, this pin, and that pin, the key only has to push up the spring. Well, and gravity, but that's not that much. But at this point, there will be more force on the key by the pins than on the other positions. And if I turn it the other way, with some luck, that happens on another pin. So that pin will push, if it moves up, will push there. And if I turn it the other side, well, hopefully another pin will do the same. If we take that key out and examine it quite closely on a microscope and with some good lighting, then you'll see nothing, a mark, nothing, a mark, and nothing. And that looks a bit like this. Well, hopefully we can do that on the microscope, and we'll see how that happens. And what we do then, at the spots where we see some dents, we take off a bit of material. What is a bit? Not that much. That's it's if you know the brand and type of the lock, you can go online and figure out what the actual depths are. So what the possible depths are that you so you know how much material you take off. And then that's a not working key. So we rinse and repeat. This sucks. Yes, please, questions.
Does it matter if you have a certified lock and European?
Well, for this,
yeah.
No.
What is the difference?
The difference between certification for a lock is that normally the key profile is protected, so you can't buy those profiles. So getting blanks would be a problem, but that's about it. And but for the picking part, it doesn't matter that much. It's not annoying at all, this. Do we have more questions, please? Yes.
Regarding custom locks, if you had the set of keys, does that make it more secure if you get a custom lock?
How do you define custom lock? What's a custom lock?
If you have a custom lock, so I guess you go to a lock maker and then...
If it's actually designed for you
unique,
and you have
yeah.
a profile, so a key shape that's not on the open market, then it will be hard for other people to get their hands on that key profile.
Okay.
Picking will still be the same.
A picking will be absolutely the same, yeah. Okay, it doesn't like all the things. We're here. So at the spots where there are spots, we take off some material and then we rinse and repeat. And of course, nothing really changed now. So if you start turning this, there will still be a mark there and a mark there. So that will bind making a mark, that will bind making a mark. So there's marks in the valleys we just created. And what we do then, that looks about this. And what we do then, well, in those, well, where there's mark, we take off materials, so we take a bit off, even a bit more off. Rinse and repeat. What we do now is, well, do it again. But at this position, the pin has the correct depth. So at this position, this pin stack is open. So that one won't mark. So with some luck, at another position, marks will start to appear. On this pin stack, nothing changed, and here is a new mark. So if we keep on repeating this process, at some point you will end up with a working key. And it looks vaguely like this. If you look at this one, that's the original key. That's the, well, it's not the duplication because we didn't have that one. And it looks weird. That's because I use a round file. But if you look at the important bits, that's the same depth. That's the same depth. So the important bit is the bit where the pin touches the lock, right? Well, your pin touches the key. And if that depth is correct, then it works. And if you're any good at this, you win prizes. And now we're going to demo. Okay. Well, maybe, hopefully, God knows, God willing. Where are we? Let's see. No. I had this all booted up before, of course, but, well, reasons. Good one? No. Come on. Normally I'm quite professional. There you go. Okay. That one, it looks like crap, but it'll be better once we get started. Okay. I have here a lock that's mounted in a sturdy thing. I have a blank key, totally uncut, as it hangs at your key cutting environment. What I do now, I use this to make some marks that I know where the pins should be. Because even the highest possible key is a bit less high than a blank key. So does that make sense? So a key that comes out of the box has more material than a working key actually could have. And because I know the brand and mark of this lock, I know what the highest positions are. And now I'm going to try to file to that depth. So you might have noticed that I haven't touched the lock yet. Yeah. That should work. Okay, so now I have a prepared blank. Does that work-ish? Well, trying to get it in focus, but it's almost. Okay, you see the shiny bits. Come on. This is the original key, and this is the surface I just filed, which is more smooth. So if a mark will be easier to recognize on the smooth area than on the lunar surface that the original key is. So first time add lock, put this in. So I turn one way and I jiggle the key up and down. Turn the other way, jiggle the key up and down. I'll repeat that a couple of times to get good fat marks. And we see something. Let's see if we can get this in focus. There's something there. You see that? I'll try to move it a bit in the light so there's something. And those are the some things we're looking for. So at that position, I take off material. And it's rinse and repeat. With some luck you get more marks, but that's definitely not always the case. Okay, now that happens. So every time I'm at the lock, it only takes not that much. Well, of course, I have to keep on doing that, but that's it. And now it's a question of rinse and repeat. You keep on doing the same process. Of course, if you overfile a position, you're done. And the only way to get it open is to start over again. But this is the technique. There are competitions with this technique. And first round is everybody starts with a lock at the same time. That round lasts an hour and about half of the field opens in this time. So this could be quite a long demo. If you're getting bored, just ask questions. Oops. Yes. Well, so I'm hired to do this. Could be. It depends on the lock. I know locksmiths who actually use this in the field. And the fun part is, well, you don't have to kill the lock. So it does give some wear and tear on your material, but yeah, you end up with a lock. And suppose this lock has a lot of wear and tear, so the original actual key doesn't work anymore. Well, I don't care, because I'm making a key that fits the lock. So in some points, this is the better technique. It's basically, well, it's a tool that the locksmith can use, and, well, depending on the situation, he chooses between techniques that he has for entering, and this is one of them. So I think a good locksmith knows this technique. With some training, you should be able to do this in about 10 minutes, 10, 15. But that's, of course, is without walking to the van to do the cut, but then you do it on site. I wouldn't mind this being open now.
Are there special keys that are made of material
Open.
which is lighter?
Yes, if it's a softer key, the impressions will be easier. So you will see the marks easier, but a softer key will break easier. Because you're using quite considerable force on this key, and you keep doing this over and over and over again. While training, you will break keys, lots of them. So it's a thin line between using enough force to get marks on the key and not enough in order to break it, because that would be bad. Now, you can hear, if I turn this lock, it works. So I'm done. This is a working key. But the pins were not at the absolutely dead correct level. So that will give you marks that are quite easily to see. You see that big crater there? There, and I'll fiddle with the light. You see? That's a huge mark that's kicked in. So now we have a working key, which is fun, because imagine you're in a red team environment, so you have to, well, basically break in. If you have a team of burglars who has to go in, then, or you want to place a bug in the server room, well, then you need somebody who knows server rooms. And if you want to get in like this, so you bring a locksmith and a server guy and then God knows what other guy. But now, if you break your attack apart in tiny bits, I can take this and give it to the next guy. And he can just walk in the server room and do his stuff. With lock picking, you have to pick the lock over and over again. Every time you want to get in, you need to get in. You need to pick that lock. But, well, this is a key. And my tech operator probably knows how to operate a key. And if not, well, then we have other issues. Let's see.
Does that whole mean that it should be found a little bit more than?
If you want to have a nice working key, yes. But
Yeah.
this works. Okay. Where are we, Jess? Ta-ta. That worked for some reason. Okay, this is not a new technique. This is ancient. Well, this is not the first one, but Ed Tickle, that's a American guy. That was because he died, and he worked for the FBI, and he did their NDE, which stands for non-destructive entry techniques like this. One of his first assignments on the job was they wanted to place a sting operation on a mafia boss, so they put Ed in a cardboard box, like a refrigerator box, and they delivered the box to the house that they wanted to get into, and there was a hole in the box, and they delivered him overnight, and he had his key and his file, and he just started wiggling, filing, and in the morning they collected the box, and him needing a new shirt, I reckon, and a working key. So that was kind of cool. So yeah, it has been done for ages. And the fun part, well, because you end up with a working key, it only takes one attack and then you're set. You're basically root on that lock now, which is cool. There's a book about this, written by Oliver Dietrichson. Well, this is the German book, but there's also a translation in English. But that doesn't really matter because, well, it's all about the pictures that tell you what is actually going to happen. As you can see here, it also works on dimple keys, because a dimple key is just a pin stack that has been moved by a piece of metal, so it still works the same way. Initially, we started by drilling those holes with a Dremel, which makes a mess, and we just file across those keys, and it works perfect. It's quite easy, actually, to do those. And the book even have pictures by the Kriminaltechnisches Prüflabor, which is basically the German CSI. To do this, you need some materials and a shitload of training. These help, because you saw me taking steps. And I know the brand of the lock. It's an Abus. It's a C84, something like that. And I know the possible depth that those keys should have. And I know how much I can file off to make that. For me, that's 2 strikes. And I know that because I train a lot with these tools. So you have to know how much material you can take off. Because if you take off too much, then it won't open. And you need a good file. A good file is an investment. Cheap files, are cheap and not that good. But if your file is too fine, it'll leave a more shiny surface. But then if you put a light on it to look at the marks, you'll be blinded. So you want it to make it not too shiny. But if it's too coarse, then of course you can't find it. You can't find your marks because they're in that lunar surface area. And the sweet spot we found out is a Swiss cut number 4, which is the way we grade fineness of a file. And well, that seems to be the common ground among sports picker, that the number 4 is the good coarseness that you want your file at. You need to mount your lock into something. This works, but taking that on an airplane is, well, my weight limit. I use Manfrotto super clamps for that because, well, they look cool and they do their work. Of course, well, a door might do as well, but I'm not going to drag a door through customs. You will be needing a shitload of keys. Of course, if you want to do this, your key has to fit the lock. And while you train, you will break keys, which is not a bad thing, because, well, I think anyone who races cars at some point has to skid out of the track, because then he knows, oh, that was the magic boundary. So if you don't know where the actual boundaries are, there's no way of telling if you're close to it. So like I said, you need to apply enough pressure on these keys to make marks, but not that much that they break. If you don't know when they break, then you have no way of telling if you're close to that sweet spot. Then you need some visual aids. These are quite cool add-ons on a normal flashlight. So it puts lights in here, and then you can take your key, and look at marks like this. That's quite cool. So that's cheap, mobile way of bringing your light. There are other ways some people thought of. This is a interesting box. It has a port here that you can put your key in and turn it. And on the back there are a couple of switches that give you LED light, white light, and UV. Some people like that. And you can alternate your light. The idea is brilliant, but they manufactured it that shitty that it doesn't work, but build your own. I mean, the idea is great. So if you want to travel light, oh yeah, and you need a grip. Jort Knaap, he's a tool manufacturer, he made mine. So this one, he does sell them, but they're not cheap. And some people say you can use a vice grip, which technically works because it grips your key and it grips them hard enough so it won't slip. But then your turning force is in a different plane. Because if I turn this, that works. But if I have to turn it like that, that will put all sorts of weird forces on your key, and that will break it way easier. So keeping everything in the same plane, that should be a good idea. This is a grip sold by ProLock. It's cheap, it's light, and it does work. So yeah, if we give trainings, we normally use these because they're good for an okay price. This is a tiny gizmo that I came up with. This is the core of the lock, so the cylinder that it has to turn. And I took a lot of material out of it. So now I can, if I put a key in, I can see where the mark should be. So being mobile, you don't have to bring that much. And this is the tool I used before to make the markings. This is what a normal key looks like. And this is a key that has been through that tool. So you see marks. Basically what Jort, because this is also from Jort Knaap, what he did, he took a normal lock and he dumped the pins and then he put drill bits in there. So if I try to turn that, the drill bit make actual very visible marks on my key. So going mobile, you need a file and some magnification aid and a grip. And that's basically it. And that's me. Any more questions? Sorry about the fuck-ups. Yes? That's a different lecture. Got a key somewhere. A master key system is basically if, suppose this pin stack is not consistent of 2 pins, but 3. So you have a shear line here and maybe one there. So then you have 2 possible key combinations that open that lock. Does that make sense? That's basically everything that's master keying. Question?
Yes, I like. Thank you. I like teaching people tubular lock impressioning because that's a really good quick example.
Okay,
people.
that's.
But you know, it's a quick demo. It works well.
Yeah.
Obviously, you said you can do dimple keys, you can do pin tumblers. Are there other sorts of locks you can impression other than those? You know, lever locks or.
Well, you can impression lever locks, but that's a different technique. But the same principle applies. If you put a piece of metal that normally opens a door in your lock, and you start turning it, the points that are preventing it from turning will get more stress than the others. And that's the same with a lever lock. That make sense? Yeah. Any more questions? So I guess it's beer time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.